Welcome into another edition of the James Boyd Podcast. I am joined by my editor, Jim Ayello. He was a DMP the last couple of days. He was fighting through some things, but we are back, baby. And obviously, Jim, I'm glad you're feeling better. And we're going to talk about the state of the Colts, who are not feeling better at the moment.
Yeah, I fighting the flu, and as people know, well, I should say, James, you wouldn't know because you don't have kids, as Chris Ballard liked to point out
We'll
during
get
the
into that.
presser.
We'll get into that.
They tend to introduce disease and things like that into your life, so you're fortunate on that front. But no, yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit. But no, I got to watch the whole thing. Yesterday, as I was showing James, trying to impress him before we started, I printed out the
Yes.
whole thing, took some notes, did some highlighting on things I want to talk about. Obviously, edited James' story and read it. I hope you all did as well. It was a great recap of what Chris Ballard talked about with some good analysis of it as well. So yeah, James, let's start off the top. Like, what did you think? I'll make a one point, and then I'll kind of let you go. He's really good at this. This is what he's good at. Honestly, he is. I think if you guys read Mike Silver's column from mid-season where he talked about
Yeah.
Chris Ballard being kind of a overrated GM, and I think he called him the most overrated GM in the 21st century, which is maybe stating it a little too harshly. But what he did say was that he has a great way with the media. He's kind of got a folksy nature, and he is honest typically. I think that was all true yesterday, and he's very good at this. In fact, I think Shane Steichen would go a long way in listening to the way Chris Ballard
Yeah.
talks to the media and
Yeah.
understands how to interact with the media because it would benefit him in the long term. So I'm not saying they should keep him or he deserves to keep his job or any of that stuff. I am saying he's good at this, and I think he put on another good show yesterday. And I don't mean that as a derogatory. I thought he did well yesterday. I thought he handled himself well. I mean, how did you feel though? You were in the room.
It was obviously a little more packed than usual. It's always weird walking into these meeting rooms when you know it's like end of season press conference, the GM's talking, if Ursay's talking, something like that. It's always kind of a bigger show than usual. Because I mean, for those who don't know, most Fridays during the season, there's like four reporters in there talking to Shane about injuries and what's to happen next. Whereas this day, obviously, it was packed with everybody, wanting to get their questions in to the guy who hadn't talked to us since August. Since he said, I don't listen to the outside world. I believe in my plan. If he gets me fired, so be it. He was very
Yeah.
arrogant, kind of defiant with his words back then. That was not the tone that we got this past Friday. And so,
Nope.
to me, Jim, I figured it would go like you mentioned. He fell on the sword. He beat himself up. He owned all of the mistakes, all of those things. However, he was kind of in a catch-22 where it's like whatever he says isn't going to help him. Whatever he doesn't say
Yeah.
isn't going to help him. I mean, all he can do is just basically take a beating like he did for 45 minutes from all of our questions.
That's all he could do, and he did, and he knew that. I think at one point he even says like anything that I say, fans are not going to believe or trust, and he hasn't earned their trust, and he said that he admitted to that. So again, this isn't me saying, "Whoa, man, he fell on the sword." Like, wow, what an
He
honest
really learned
appraisal of
his
his own
lesson.
job. He should keep it. He's learned his lesson. He's going to change. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is, as another disappointing season, a fourth straight season without the playoffs, another season without a division title under his watch. He did what he was supposed to do yesterday. He hasn't done what he's supposed to do as a GM. We all admit that. He admits that. But yesterday he did what he was supposed to do in terms of taking the blame for a lot of it. I mean, I went back, that was the big thing. I went back and looked through a lot of the stories you wrote this offseason. Because the thing that got me, maybe this is how we start here, but like the thing that got me was like the first thing the self-flagellation began with the running it back. And I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, I get it, but like everyone was saying at the time, are you sure you want to run it back? Like you wrote like six times, like I don't know if the secondary has enough depth. I don't know if the defensive line has enough depth, which it eventually probably did. I'll give him credit there, but like there was a lot of places where he later said they didn't create enough competition. A lot of guys got complacent. There was ego. Like I don't know if that's necessarily what you were suggesting at that time in the off season, but what you were saying was you can't go back. You were a 9-8 team that was good, not great in 2023, and you're going to run it back with 80% of the same roster and expect to just take a big leap. Like that seems
Yes.
unrealistic when the other teams are trying to get better and better and better. So again, credit to him, I guess, for understanding his mistake. But man, it's not even hindsight. It's 2020. Like we saw this coming.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the part that is probably most damning about this is when he sat up there and said that was a mistake to run it back. And as I've written, the Colts brought back almost 82% of their players from the end of last year to the beginning of this year which was number one in the league. And obviously, continuity helps. You see some of the top teams in the league, their continuity usually helps them have success year to year. But he said it himself where Ballard convinced himself that they were closer than they were because really, Jim, and I wrote this over and over again. You edited this same sentence that I probably wrote 15 different ways. Their biggest offseason addition was a healthy Anthony Richardson. They
Yeah,
thought our team's right there with the quarterback play being better, him being healthier, he'll be there. And obviously, we'll get into the Anthony part of this because he, I think, regressed this year and
for
really
sure.
did not take a step forward. That to me is pretty damning for a GM who, again, as I've written over and over again, 15 different ways, would not get this opportunity with most other owners. To be going into year nine and to sit up there and say, we're not close in year nine. And now, again, he was right to say that we're not close. I'm glad he said
Right.
that because Shane saying they're close, Anthony saying they're close, even Jim Irsay saying in the locker room after the season ending game, a few plays here or there, different season. Yeah, right. Different season indeed. He finally put some oomph behind the fact that they're not
Yeah.
close. And I'm glad he said that because to me, again, whether he deserved another opportunity, we'll get into that as well. I'm not sure that there's definitely not a strong argument there, but at least he kind of gave you some real because I'm listening to Anthony, listening to Shane, listening to Jim Irsay. I was like, what Kool-Aid is everybody drinking? Like, you guys
Yeah.
aren't that close. I mean, I put it in my story. All eight of their wins this year were by one possession. And again, you don't apologize for winning. Molly Cox said, hey, you get eight wins, eight wins. But when you're outscored by 50 points throughout the season and you're 8-9, a few plays means you could have been 4-13 or, 10-7, whatever. So I don't look at it like, oh, you're only a few plays away. No, they're a long way away from being a consistent contender or consistent team that can get back to the places they said they want to go. And I guess before we dive more into Ballard, I do want to kind of start with the top down. What did you think of Ursay's comments? Which I think the way it kind of shaped out, they posted the video on the team website of it. It basically became like a precursor for whatever we were going to hear from Ballard. Like, okay, this is what the owner said. We hadn't heard from him. What does the GM think? So, what do you think Jim Irsay, his tone and his message? And I wrote about it. I thought it was a bit of a two lens type of thing,
Yeah.
but it still wasn't what we've heard from him in the past at any juncture, any setting, anywhere.
I I appreciated what you wrote because when I watched the video, I was confused as to what was going on, which is not necessarily an uncommon reaction when you listen to Jim Irsay talk sometimes is where you're a little
Yeah,
like, all right, what's he talking about? Um, I understood why he was trying to be grateful and why he should have been grateful. Again, these like you mentioned in the story, I thought it was well put that these guys put their bodies on the line, 20 times this year in terms of, preseason and regular season games. And that's no joke. You can't just dismiss that. I don't care if you lose all 20 of those games. Like
right.
that's a real thing. So you thank them for what they did and for how hard they tried. It's not a team that quit either. This is not any of that kind of thing. So I get that. I get where he was coming from with there. I think he was trying to spin it positive. They won a game. They're 1-0 in 2025. That was kind of corny. But like, yeah, it definitely didn't. I think the balance that you struck in your story, and I appreciate it, was that it just didn't sound like the Jim Irsay that we had heard in the past. And to be fair, he wasn't addressing fans, which he typically is in those like we're gonna Lombardi's
Yeah,
those
exactly.
speeches. Um, he was addressing the team after a tough season, so I understand where he probably didn't want to take it to that level. But it was like you said, it was an odd thing. To be frankly, it was an odd thing for the Colts to put out there. The
Exactly. I was
team,
gonna say that. I was very surprised they put that out there, given obviously the reaction that they knew had to be coming.
yeah,
Maybe Ursay wanted it out there. I'm not sure. I'll ask him next time I see him. But that was
yeah.
interesting to me, Jim.
Yeah, I agree with you. That was the thing. Like, if he said all those things to the team in the locker room, fair, fine, I get it. Like, he is just trying to put a bow on a season and be as an owner, and again, thank them for what they've done for on his team.
Yeah,
I get that. I truly do, and I think it was the right thing to do. To release it out to the Colts public is a questionable decision because then it is all interpreted by everybody as, oh, maybe he's just accepting mediocrity, which again, it's just the wrong time to be conveying that message to your fans because you've just rehired your GM, who is the definition of mediocrity throughout. That's his resume, I should say, is the definition of mediocrity.
mm-hmm.
it was the wrong message to send on the Colts communications staff side of things, I would say.
Yeah.
I don't think it was necessarily the wisest call. I don't want to blame Jim Irsay too much for what he was said in a
Nah.
locker room after a game and then it goes out later because I'm sure he probably wasn't thinking I'm addressing both players, coaches, and then
Yeah.
fans. You know what I mean? Like
I
that's
was
tough. That's a tough like obstacle to overcome.
I was telling someone the other day the tone in that post locker room speech versus the tone he gave in the letter to the fans were totally different. With the fans, it's this disappointment. We haven't done good enough. You have a right to be frustrated. With the players, again, I wrote this in the story. Michael Pittman Jr. played with the fractured back. Julian Blackmon played with the torn labrum. DeForest Buckner always plays through something. He doesn't tell us, but he plays through something every year. And
Yeah.
all those guys are playing through a lot of tough, hard things. And on top of that, they won the game. So you're not going to come in there and be like, all right, pack your bags, get out of here, you all stink. That would be a terrible environment to try to cultivate as
Yeah.
an owner. Now, fast forwarding to Ballard, I think that he gave more again, and he had to. He didn't have any goodwill to kind of, use. He had to sit up there and say, I failed. This isn't working. The plan I had didn't work. Running it back didn't work. Now, diving deeper into some of the things that he said, I'll start with, and I appreciated Chap for starting it off the right way, like he always does. The quarterback. I think the quarterback is such a big part of this. Now, we can get into, Ballard's messaging and things like that. But I ultimately, if you look at the last two times they made the playoffs, the Colts, it was with Andrew Luck in 2018, Philip Rivers in 2020. Outside of those 2 years, over the last 6 or 7, they haven't had good quarterback play at
No.
all. 2019, no. 2021, Carson Wentz. I mean, again, we've gone through this. Jim Irsay, Carson Wentz. I don't think either one is going to be at either one's birthday party anytime soon. When it
Nope.
comes to 2022, my first season on the beat, Jeff Saturday was the coach and Sam Ellinger was the quarterback. That happened. 2023, obviously, AR gets hurt. Gardner Minshew does a decent job to get him
Yeah,
there
so he gives
almost to
you
the end.
league average
I
maybe
actually
quarterback play.
don't
Yeah.
necessarily kill them for 2023 not making the playoffs. And then this year, you see Anthony and Joe both struggle, and Anthony obviously with the injuries, the benching, all that. So starting it off, I think it starts with Anthony, and there were some moments, and I think that Ballard was right to point those out, where obviously we look at the Jets game, his best performance ever as a pro. The
Yeah.
game that's the game. If you want to be an Anthony Richardson believer, you look at that game and you say, I've seen it at least once. It's in him. He can do it. The drive against New England to go down there and win late, that was huge. He's had some moments. The throw to Alec in week 1, the moonshot, incredible play. Had a fairly
Yep.
decent game that game. But overall, even pre-benching, post-benching, the quarterback play hasn't been consistent enough. And one of the things that I really pushed Ballard on, and I still, I don't think we'll ever get like a real answer about this, was I think they anticipated, okay, we might have to deal with the roller coaster inaccuracy. We'll have to deal with perhaps some injuries. But the thing that is most damning about, I think, Ballard, this team, whatever culture they're building, is that they had to bench their quarterback, a guy who was voted a team captain twice by his teammates, because he wasn't working hard enough. And then when I asked Ballard about that, I was like, hey, because I know benching him isn't step one. Like, you're not going to be like, oh, he slipped in this area. We're going to bench him immediately. There had to be other things that you did. And so I asked Ballard, why did it even get to this point where you had to bench him?
Right.
And he asked if I had kids. And as Jim, as you know, and others know, as I joke with Joel A. Erickson from Indy Star all the time, I ain't got no kids. I don't see much upside with kids right now. I don't know if I ever will. So love will be the reason I have kids, because other than that, I'm like, I don't see the logic behind this. But again, in all seriousness,
There
shout
isn't
out
a
to all
lot
the
of logic
parents.
behind it, to be fair. No, yeah.
Shout out to all the parents out there, including you. But in all seriousness, when he says, hey, it's like when you got kids, and he said that Anthony's a grown man, but he's like, it's like when you have kids, he asks them to clean their room. Do they do it every time? Probably not. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I understand the analogy. I understand that, he might not have gotten it right away, but why again don't you think it got through? Because to be fair, and I wasn't gonna go back and forth with Ballard. There's other people asking questions, and you're trying to gauge the situation. But in my mind, in hindsight, I'm like, I should have asked him. Okay, but what teenager is getting asked to clean their room for $30 million
Yeah.
because of the face of a franchise? Because it's their dream. Like I don't dream of cleaning my room. I dream of being the face of a franchise, and obviously the stuff that comes with it isn't always what you dream about. But the fact that they had to bench him, and I pushed again, and I said, okay, but I get all of that, but why didn't the other interventions work? And that's when he told me, hey, it wasn't always all bad. It wasn't just
Right.
bottom of the barrel. These issues kept going. He needed a reset. He told me, hey, I'm not James. What you write, I ain't perfect either. And I was like, you know what? You're right about that. The part that people can't see is I definitely laughed at that, and a lot of us in the room laughed as well. But all that to say, that concerns me because in my mind, I'm like, man, can you change? Have you changed? Do you get it now? And since then he has acted, and from what I've heard, the way he's performed in front of the media, all the professionalism stuff seems to have gotten to a higher degree. But then the flip side, Jim, I'll let you weigh in as well, is that the play hasn't matched it. So it's like, man, all right, you still got questions about his ability, but the fact that you had to bench him to get his attention, to me, is already pretty damning. And then it's like, oh man, but the play isn't matching that either. You see what I'm saying?
I do. Although I will say I was sympathetic to his point about when he came back that he was better. The Jets game was the best of his career, so that
Yeah.
was obviously
Yeah.
the game. I was with Ballard. I know he won 11 of 28 against Detroit. I didn't think he was the reason they lost in Detroit. I thought he had a lot.
Nah,
I think you wrote in the story they let him down in many
nah,
ways
he got
across the board
pressured a
on that.
ton. Yeah.
New
Well,
England
I'll say it
game,
like this, just to kind of
yeah,
soften it a bit. I think he
sure,
tapered off. Like it wasn't like he
yeah.
just ascended and he rose to this level and he stayed there. I think as the season kind of went on, you look at the Denver game, you
The
look
Denver
at
game was brutal.
that was pretty rough. Obviously, the
Yeah,
entire team that was rough, and then obviously he misses the last two games, because of injury. So these are all factors you have to consider. The Titans
yeah,
game, didn't have to throw the ball very much because
they
he
didn't
ran
need
it a
him. Yeah,
ton.
yeah.
But I just think that his play didn't necessarily like just jump to a certain level and stay there, which is
It
unrealistic. It's hard.
it didn't jump. I will, like I said, if you look at it though, if you go Jets, Lions, Patriots, Denver, Tennessee, I would say three of those games he was either good or fine. Tennessee, I'm going to count as an NA. Like they didn't need him.
Yeah.
And then the Denver game was bad, like no doubt bad. I again, so if you're 3-0 and or 3-1-1, I guess that's like again, that's maybe progress. I would say like again, there's reason to
Right.
believe that it's
Right.
going to get better. I thought Steichen did a better job with him in those games typically. I mean, overall.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the bigger point, which is Ballard's bigger point, was that even when he did start to show, again, didn't take a huge leap, but minor progress, he got hurt again. He got hurt again, and that
Yep.
is the thing that Ballard said is the number one thing is that 2 seasons in a row now we can't trust him. We can't trust him to stay on the field. So they're going to bring in competition for him, which
He
is what
needs it.
Ballard said. Yeah, because one, he needs it to push him. Two, they can't rely on him to play every game, and they know that, and that is 100% a knock against it to me. And I again, I think people that listen to this podcast probably realize that I'm more of a Richardson apologist than the average, I
Yeah.
guess you would say. I tend to believe that it's still there and you should continue working with him and developing him. So I am with Chris Ballard on that side of things is that, yes, roll him back in 2025. Yes, bring him back as the starter. Yes, try to develop it one more time.
Mm-hmm.
But I also totally agree that you can't trust him. He has not earned it. He has not earned it in terms of his ability to stay healthy. And you're right, he has not earned it in terms of leadership. Like
What's
this
the word that
offseason
he
will be
used?
huge for that.
Absolutely. I'll let you continue. But the word I think Ballard used was stamped. Like you can't stamp it yet.
Yeah, you don't know, and you do have to. This offseason is going to be. I think I can't remember who asked the question. Somebody asked it during asked Ballard, how do you monitor whether he's doing what he's supposed to be doing during the
Yeah, I think that
offseason?
was Kevin Bond. Yeah.
It's a great question. It's a damning question to be honest with you because the fact that you have to even worry about it is not great. But you do know he has the guys in Florida that he goes and sees. You know he
Mm-hmm.
goes back to Indianapolis, but we also know that there was some immaturity issues, maybe even last offseason and during the season that they just can't show up anymore. There can be no rumors
Yeah.
of it. There can be none of that.
I was
It
gonna
all has to be
say
cleaned up. Like
no. Yeah.
if there's any of that, then you probably know your answer that he's not got the message hasn't gone through. Like I think, and this is another interesting point that I kind of wanted to hear what your thoughts are. He did want to bench him longer. He did want to bench him longer,
Yeah.
and it wasn't just for the like. I don't think it was only punitive. I do think there was which. Sorry, my head is going to explode if I can look at this part out. The Houston game where he was falling apart. Everyone could see. It's funny that because that's the one Ballard highlighted. The lack
Yeah.
of poise was gone, and
Yeah. He was
it
erratic
still
and
drives me
nuts.
freaking crazy that Steichen was dialing up passes at the end of that half.
Didn't
Like
make any
what?
sense.
Everyone could see this guy was on tilt. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? So
Yep.
anyway, but my point being is he also said he just needed a breather and things were moving too fast, which understandable. This is what happens to some rookie or young quarterbacks, and that was what his like seventh, eighth, ninth start in the NFL at that point.
It was his 10th
It's
because that was
understand
right before he got
that.
benched. Yep.
So totally understandable that those moments happen, and we've seen. I think Ballard was right to point out there are some quarterbacks who have moved on from different spots. Sam Darnold's, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith. Like these are good examples of quarterbacks who have taken time to develop into the quarterbacks that they are, and whether that's developing better habits or just learning how to be a better pro, I don't know what the
Or
answer is.
changing teams.
Or changing teams,
It's part of
exactly.
it.
You could be right. It could be any of those things. I don't know what it is, but linear, again, this is one of those cliches of analytics, but progress isn't linear. It
No, it's
sometimes
not.
it's up and down. So I do want to get back to the point though about what was your reaction to he wanted to bench him for more than 2 games, other than the fact that Joe Flacco sucked so much that they couldn't bench him for more than 2 games.
Yeah, that was a hard truth though that he admitted because remember when I asked Shane that he's like it didn't have any factor and I'm like BS. No one believes that.
Lies. Yeah.
I don't think Joe Flacco even believed that himself. So it was good to just hear somebody admit, okay, yeah, we had to go back to AR because our backup wasn't playing well either. And then I think the term that Ballard used was that he was drowning, and so they had to reset him. And so I thought that was very interesting because it kind of gives you some insight as to what process they probably wanted to have for him. And
Yeah.
that was to kind of sit him and keep him on the bench and learn some things and maybe not have to, I guess, fast track everything.
Yeah.
Because it's a tough decision because there was no way that Shane could stand before us after those 2 games from Joe Flacco and continue to tell us that Joe gave the team the best chance to win. There's no way he could tell us that. And, for better or worse, you look at the roster this year or you look at the games, Anthony was in 11 games this year, 6-5. I think Joe won 2 of his starts, and so, hey, you can say the quarterback play was better with Joe from some fan perspectives. To me, I don't really think so. I think that, you had 2 quarterbacks who were just okay.
Yeah.
And if you're going to have you probably need to play the guy you drafted number 4 overall. But the fact that he felt that they couldn't play him or they didn't want to lets me know again that he had a lot of ground to make up or a lot of things to correct behind the scenes. And also just he needed that breather perhaps a bit longer. And so that was very interesting to me
Yeah.
because we hadn't heard anybody be that candid about it.
Yeah.
And again, I think that kind of shows to me, for better or worse, that whatever process they had, whatever the plan they had with Anthony, has just been botched so far.
Yeah.
You could say it's due to injury, you could say it's due to immaturity, you could say it's due to play, but I'm 1,000% sure this isn't what they envisioned when they drafted him. Even if things had gone wrong, because this past year it was pretty much anything that you could think of that like could not go their way, pretty much happened. I don't think they went into the year saying that even if he's having a rough year, we're gonna have to bench this guy. They had to bench him, and they wanted to bench him longer. So that was very interesting to me. Um, I'm curious to hear Anthony's thoughts on that at some point. Obviously, he's in the offseason now, probably somewhere hot and not dealing with this Indianapolis snow. But yeah, that was
Right, man.
very intriguing and something that I'll have to follow up on for sure, and something that kind of piqued my interest. The second thing that he mentioned that was interesting to me was that he said he felt like AR just kind of gets ramped up and kind of over processes or overthinks things, and that can kind of mess with some of the fundamental stuff, some of the short yardage, intermediate throws. I think this offseason, all Anthony should be working on, quite frankly, is, or not all, but the main thing, their bread and butter should be the layup throws. Just
Yep.
all day, every single day. That's all you do. And, Ballard was saying that he believes Anthony's back, which Anthony said his back stuff might be chronic. A lot of people have downplayed it since then. Shane has downplayed it. Ballard downplayed it. It doesn't seem like it's as, crazy. AR was saying he believes he's going to be fine, doesn't think he'll need surgery, all those things. And we'll see. Obviously, we know what that means in Colts
Yeah.
lame. Player gets hurt. Oh, it's not that bad. And then you look up and Andrew Luck and Shaq Leonard happen. So hopefully that's not the case with Anthony. Knock on
Jeez.
wood here. But
Yeah.
he was saying, though, in all seriousness, that a relatively healthy offseason should help him because keep in mind, last year he couldn't throw, he couldn't run, he couldn't do anything
Right.
because of the shoulder. And I know that might sound weird for some listening. He couldn't run. He couldn't run because the force from running would like send it up back through his body and mess with like his AC joint that he had surgery on. Fun fact for you there. So we'll see what this offseason brings for him. But obviously, there's a lot to change, to grow. And to me, I believe that next year is a make or break it year. And I asked him that, on locker cleanout,
Yeah.
do you realize that? Do you feel that? And he's like, what do you mean? I put it plainly for him that they could move on from quarterback and have somebody else be the face of this team. And he said, you know what? Every day could be a make or break a day. We look at it like that. He said, I know what it means to lose your job. You can lose it in a day. He lost it in, a day.
He
The
does
tap
know.
out
Yep.
obviously didn't help, in that day. And he was saying that, it's realistic. And he also said he would welcome if the team moves in that direction of bringing competition, which Ballard confirmed, he would welcome that. And so who that quarterback might be, I'll sit there for another, podcast later
Yeah.
down the
We
road.
got months to talk about that.
Exactly, all those things. But to kind of pivot a little bit, I do want to get a little bit deeper into some of the culture stuff
Mm.
that Ballard hit on. Obviously, he ripped the anonymous player who I told breaking news here on the podcast. The player's name is Matt Saracen. And if you understand that joke, I'll leave it at that. That's what I wrote in the comments. If somebody asked me, all right, James, spill the beans. And I was like, all right, it's Matt Saracen. Hell of a player, by the way. Heck of a player. I know Ballard was very mad about this anonymous player. I don't know if they want to get rid of, Matt Saracen. Hell of a
He's
player.
probably gonna have to transfer, is what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. A little Friday Night Lights reference for you there, for those who are not familiar. But in all seriousness, he was mad about that. He mentioned that Zaire's podcast, in a roundabout way, was a distraction. He mentioned that Shane has to have better messaging going forward. I think all these things, matter. But the most damning thing that he said was that I did not create an environment that promoted enough competition to bring out the best in people. And I think that will have to be addressed through free agency. He sounded like he'll be more aggressive, or he has to be more aggressive. Shout out to Nate Atkins for putting him on the spot about that.
Yeah.
Because I was
Commit
like,
to commit to signing free agents
I
right now. I
know
was like, whoa.
it was that, but no, there was the clapback from Nate where I think Nate said something about like,
It was
why didn't
every playoff team added a starter through free agency.
exactly
Yeah.
because initially he challenged him like, hey, how come you all didn't sign the free agents? Free agents. He's like, well, a lot of teams spend money. He's like, no, 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 no. Every playoff team added a starter in free agency.
Yep.
That's where you want to go. And he literally could not say anything. I was like, wow, that's having the receipts on deck. And so, along with the free agency talk, along with the culture environment talk, what do you think of him saying my team is not competitive enough? That is
Yeah. I mean,
wow.
it's something that I never actually thought Chris Ballard would say, since that's something he's talked about. I mean, I think every GM and coach talks about creating competition in the roster and how it's good, but man, I can't get this thought out of my head that sometimes I think he wants to prove people wrong more than he like not more than he wants to win, but he loves proving people wrong, and he loves when his own guys prove people wrong.
He
Like
said he's
I think the
stubborn and
more
hard headed. He said those
it,
two words over and
I
over
think
again.
the more you guys pushed last year and the years before about free agency and L'Jarius Sneed and all the other Daniil Hunter and all the other things they could have done, I think the more he doubled down, it's like, you know what, F them. My guys are gonna develop. We're gonna get better, and we're gonna prove to everybody we don't need to add anybody from the outside. I don't know if that's true, but it's just the more I heard him talk about it, the more I think he just doubled down on his own. Like, you know what? Screw these guys. Like, they don't know what they're talking about. I know what I'm talking about. I drafted good players. I brought in good UDFAs. Like, they're going to be fine. So, I think he learned his lesson. I think it's, let me rephrase that. I think it sounds like he learned his lesson. And until, like he said, until he proves it, until he does something different for the first time, frankly, in 8 years. And I know he'd like to cite, I signed Chris, I traded for DeForest Buckner and signed Phillip Rivers. Like, yeah, Justin Houston. These are good additions, and I understand that. But,
Yep.
like, for the most part, he's a pretty laid back, takes the offseason off type of GM. Not takes it off, but you know what I mean. Until he proves that he's going to be a little bit more aggressive and he's going to seriously add some players to this roster and try to make them competitive, then I'm not going to say I don't believe him, but let's just see it first. Let's just see it first. I do think it's a great first step to admit where you're wrong, but let's see it first because yeah, you look around this team, man, and they didn't have the depth. I honestly think Gus Bradley kind of got screwed in some ways. Like at last year's one of these, the State of the Union of the Colts,
Yeah.
Chris Ballard said, "I didn't give him enough in the secondary. I
So
didn't give him
blame me.
enough,
Yeah, that's what he said.
so blame me." And then he didn't give him anything in the second. He did it again, and then Gus Bradley takes the fall, which I understand fired, fine, whatever, but he
So
didn't add anything to that deep.
parts ways,
He he added Latu, who is not the best effing pass rusher in the draft. A good player, but not the best effing pass rusher in the draft.
as
Um,
he stated.
right. That's what I mean. Yeah. I don't
A.D.
know. Like I
Mitchell,
said,
second round pick.
oh, that's what I mean. But defensively, like they just didn't add much to this team.
Yeah.
They just expected everybody
Oh,
to
you're
get
talking
better.
about yeah, defensively, yes.
Yeah,
I
Bradley kind of
agree.
got screwed by Ballard's like doubling down on hard headedness.
And when DeForest Buckner says ego is the reason why we have the worst defense since I've been here,
Yes.
individualism, guys are too comfortable. He said he loved those comments from DeForest Buckner, who was the most respected guy, I think, in that building when it comes to players.
It's him or Quentin Nelson. I think are probably
Yeah.
one too.
And like seriously, and I would almost, maybe I'm biased, but like since DeForest Buckner speaks for the
No, you're right.
team more
Yeah,
often,
you're right.
maybe that comes with a little bit more cachet. Not to
Sure.
say Quentin Nelson, obviously we see him. He's a seven-time Pro Bowler through his first 7 years on a Hall of Fame trajectory. Big Q, if you're listening, don't beat me up or cuss me out next time I see you.
Top
I
two's
said,
still pretty good, man. Top two's
you
still pretty
weren't the top leader on the team. But trust me, when he speaks, people listen too. But I think, again, that comfortability, not having competition
Yeah.
at certain positions, that hindered this team, that held them back. And the two positions that, Ballard mentioned specifically that they said they have to upgrade was cornerback and safety, which
Shocker.
we hammered all summer. And granted, Nick Cross, whoop-de-doo. I don't want to be disrespectful. Nick Cross had a solid season.
He had
He's
he had a good
proven
season.
he's an NFL starter, still young. I think he's a sound player. Julian Blackman playing through a torn labrum. Rough season for him. Do you bring him back? I don't know. He's been hurt every year you needed him. It's a hard one to swallow. And then you look at the cornerbacks. Juju Brents is hurt again. Sam Womack was an okay waiver signing. Kenny
Yeah.
Moore, obviously, you're one of your better secondary slot corners in the league. And
Yeah.
then you look at Jalen Jones. He's like, okay, he's an okay play. He's an okay starter, but you don't have dudes, and you need dudes to win in this league, especially in a passing league and in your division, and in these games in the AFC where you have a lot of super talented quarterbacks. You need these guys to step up, and you didn't have that. He mentioned that he thought the D line played pretty well, which I don't know about that. But to me, if he thinks that means okay, that means you also didn't think your linebackers were that great then, because why didn't they get home? So
I don't know, but they better
what's
have
the
played
issue?
well with all the resources he poured into the defensive line. They better freaking play well. All the
Exactly.
first and second round picks and like the
Exactly.
Ebukam signing. I know Ebukam wasn't there, but like the money that he does spend goes there. Buckner, like the D-line better play well because that's pretty much where you put your resources. So yeah,
Exactly. And so now you're looking up a year later, like, how do I fix this? And that was Jim Irsay's message to him. Fix it.
fix it.
Fix whatever mess you have made. I want to win. Let's figure this out. And again, you've gotten a lot more grace than any GM will probably get from any owner. Now, when I look at the team building process, I'm curious to also know, we talked about the defense already, but just offensively as well. Are you going to go get a legit running back too? You probably need that. JT had a hell of a season, monster season,
He did.
but you cannot rely on any running back to play 90% of the snaps every game, which is what JT basically did for like the last month of the season. He didn't come out the
Which
game.
I was going to say, which I mean, you have to respect because I think you and I talked a lot about them not using him enough in the second half, and
Oh, yeah.
I think Steichen was like, you know what, screw it, we're just going to play him all the time, which I get. They needed to
Fine.
win.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm like, that's for that. And again, that works if you're trying to win those January,
Yeah.
late December games. But I'm like,
Yeah.
you can't play the guy 95% of the snaps for 17 weeks and expect him to stay healthy. Like, that's just not realistic for a running back. He mentioned that when he did add competition, like an A.D. Mitchell to that wide receiver room, it pushed Alec, made Alec, and Alex said it himself, made him lock in more, made him, feel like he had to earn his spot. He said, you know what? It wasn't just given to me. I had to go out there and earn it in camp. This guy's trying to take my spot. And so he said he needs that. I think he said it was like a healthy level of uncomfortability within the team, that stress you put on the team. And so I think that's a huge part of it. And then moving on to other culture things, He said he talked to Zaire one on one about the podcast. Um, I'm curious to hear what Zaire's plans are. I mean, at this point, in my opinion, my honest opinion, this is not me being, a hater. Maybe I am, whatever. Just stop doing it.
Yeah, kill it. That's what I would
Kill
do.
it. Like, we were talking about just one of my buddies the other day. It rarely goes well for you to be an active athlete with your podcast. It rarely goes well. It works for the Kelseys because, they're future Hall of Famers. They had won
Yeah.
already a ton. They
Yeah, they
were,
both won. They both
fine.
won Super Bowls. Yeah,
Exactly. And just quite frankly, they're just better at it than everybody else. Seriously.
yeah. Well, and also to be
Um,
honest with you, it would have been a good podcast always, but no one would have cared about it unless Travis Kelce started dating Taylor Swift. Like that was like
no,
most
seriously.
of the time, no, it kind of just flew under the radar anyway.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
yeah,
it was like an athlete. Now it's like an athlete
it's
adjacent
yeah,
podcast and all that stuff like that. But I don't see the benefit or the upside to that. So that's something they have to definitely nip in the bud. And that's your team captain, saying he wants to spank the Giants and then you go out there and lose and, arguing with different players that you won't name. It's certain stuff. It's like, don't do that. There's no benefit to that. You're a second team All Pro now. Just got to, focus on that and building, as a player. Like him and Quentin Nelson are second team All Pros. The other one ain't got a
yeah.
podcast.
Can I play devil's advocate there real
Go
quick?
ahead. Yeah.
Do you think he's second team All Pro because of the? Do you think the podcast had anything to do with it? Him getting his name out there more,
I do
talking
think
trash,
that
being out there with Stroud.
him
'Cause
being more visible certainly helped.
that's what
I
I
don't
was
want to
wondering.
completely
Yeah,
discredit, his what he's earned because he goes out there and plays. I don't. Like he's earned
for
it.
sure.
But I definitely think it helps to be sort of a louder personality. I don't know if you
That's what I
get
mean.
that because honestly, a lot of times you don't get to even second team All Pros for a team that misses the playoffs. You don't usually get that. I mean, it just doesn't happen.
Well, that's what I mean.
Um,
So it's got to be a me versus the team thing because it's clearly not good for the team. But I was
yeah,
wondering, is there benefit for him? Because there might be. There
yeah,
might be
but
reason
again,
to
you
say
have
that
to
he got
completely
that. Yeah,
rebrand. Then you have to stop cursing every other word. You probably got to stop saying other words as often as you do. Like all those things kind of have to be factored in because there has to be a certain level of professionalism. And honestly, the way I look at it, if you really want to grow the pod or to get it into a higher tier, there has to be some replay value to it. You have to be able to clip it and share it, for Bleacher Report and for ESPN and for, House of all these different, outlets. You got to make it so it's digestible for an entire audience. And then also just make it shorter. Like, I know I'm
yeah.
going on a rant here,
I'm
but
not
it's
saying he
like,
should continue going. I just wanted
yeah.
to throw it out
Yeah, no,
there
I
that
get
it's
it. But
possible it
again,
helped.
it's something
Yeah,
you have to consider, especially when you put your team in a bad spot. Now they have to answer for it, and your GM's answering for it, your coach is answering for it. Your quarterback, you went on the podcast to talk about him tapping out before you talk to him about tapping out. Like that's not a good or great look for a team
nope.
leader. I think he knows that. I think he's acknowledged that. Now, obviously, you have to again, like Ballard, put your actions behind your words because as we saw, you said all the stuff was behind you, then you went out there and pretended to shake hands with Pat McAfee, at the end of
Ugh,
the season, and it's like, why pour more gasoline on
just
this?
grow up.
Have you matured? And that's the question we have to ask him as well. Have you matured? And then you have to keep in mind, you were the top dog in Gus Bradley's defense, which wasn't that great these last few years.
No,
A new defensive coordinator is coming in. He might change your role. Are you still going to be that guy? Are you still going to be the top dog? And if you are, and if you're expected to be a leader, he might not rock with all that. I'm not sure a lot of people did at some point throughout the season. And so that's something to keep in mind going forward. I do want to hit on Shane as well. Chris Ballard said he has to communicate better. The messaging has to be better. And I think it does. I asked Shane actually at his end of year press conference, does he think the way he talked about Anthony affected their relationship at all? And he said he doesn't think it affected it. They have a strong relationship. But I do think that looking at the whole back thing, the most recent thing, the way Anthony talked about his back the first time we talked to him afterward, it's like he was going like scorched earth. Like, all right, yeah, I wasn't just sore. Here's
right.
everything. And almost it was to his detriment because he was too vulnerable and too like, you know, outspoken. I had back stuff since eighth grade. It might be chronic. It might be this. I had an MRI. But he like laid it all out. Like I wasn't just sore. And so I think that those things matter. I know I went back and forth with a few people who commented on my story recently saying, oh, you guys are just in the media. Who cares? You guys are just throwing a fit because no, they don't want to talk to you, journalists, blah, blah, whatever. Dude, I don't care what he says to me because I'll say my piece. Jim, I don't pull punches ever. I'm thinking, hey, I'll say my piece
Nope.
whenever I feel like it.
Yep.
But the messaging from the top down does matter when it involves your franchise quarterback. You got to protect the quarterback. Like everyone knows this. That's why he wears the red jersey whenever it's not game day. You got to protect the quarterback. And there's two times this season where I felt like Shane, because he didn't wasn't just a bit more transparent. You don't have to tell us everything. Be a bit more transparent to help him. And so again, I'll ask you to weigh in. As much as we've asked Anthony to grow, Zaire to grow, obviously Chris Ballard has to grow. I think Shane has to grow too
Yeah.
when it comes to being the voice of your team throughout the season.
So I think in the first instance, the benching him, I think that was a mistake. And again, don't get me wrong, the messaging was terrible. But that was a mistake of trying to protect Anthony Richardson. I
Right.
think he was trying to protect him ultimately from criticism from the outside world. If he comes out and says anything to the effect of he wasn't preparing well enough, he wasn't doing that stuff right away, and a lot of people will kill him, and maybe deservedly so. But I think he was trying to say, I'm not going to say anything. We'll sort it out internally,
Right.
and we'll go from there. Which again, I think it's just naive. And I think he has to be smarter than that. And I think Chris
Yeah.
Ballard has kind of said that to him.
Yeah, he
Is
was like,
like
they're gonna find out anyway.
they're gonna find out anyway, so you might as well tell him the truth. And to be fair, like the breather thing was perfect. I don't know why Ballard didn't just tell him to say that.
Yeah.
Listen, you guys all saw what happened in Houston. He tapped out. He got overwhelmed. We're gonna give him a break. It's not the idea. Do we? Is this the development plan we had for him? Of course not. But he clearly showed he needed a break. We're gonna take him out for a couple of weeks and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. Let people rip you apart for that if you want, but at least it's a clear message. At least it's a clear, like, when's he coming back? We don't know. When we feel like he's ready.
Mm-hmm.
When we feel like he got the breather that he needed. That would have been fine. So the messaging does need to improve 100%. I do think Shane Steichen, his mistakes come from trying to not share information. And I think his mistakes trying to come from, and that comes from trying to protect his
Yeah,
players.
it's like a mother hen type of thing.
For sure.
Yeah.
He just needs to learn to know when he's doing it poorly, frankly. It's like with the benching, it was bad. And then with the back injury, I don't think he even realized he was making his quarterback look
Nah.
worse, but he was.
Nah.
So he talks a lot about, I have to go back and look at the tape. I swear to God, he should go back and look at some of his press conferences and the way he handled some of these questions and said, okay, how can I be better? You should sit down. Colts have good PR people. You should sit down with some of them and say, like, how should I have answered this question? What would have been a better way of handling that?
Yeah.
Because you're right. Is it the most important thing he needs to do this offseason? No,
Nah.
there's like 10 other things he needs to do.
Nah.
But it's definitely something he needs to improve on and work on, and he should carve out a day or two to go, okay, how do I get better at being the spokesperson for this team? Because so far he's not done a great job of it.
Exactly. And that's my biggest thing is like, look, again, X's and O's matter. Winning matters. I mean, if you get up there and you say a bunch of nothing and you win every game, nobody
Whatever.
cares.
Yeah.
And it works. That was the pushback I gave some, commenters the other day was, yeah, you always say, well, Bill Belichick didn't talk. He won all the time. And then the moment he stopped winning, they got rid of him because that Patriot way gets old when you lose.
Yep.
Like that's just the bottom line. And so, and then also it hasn't worked, other places if you tried that, by the way. So there's different philosophies for how you can go about things. But I look at the best teams in the league, or even just the most consistent teams. Like I'll take a team like the Steelers, for example. The Steelers don't have to me, the last, I would say 7 years of Steelers football, I have never thought they're a Super Bowl contender. But I did think, oh,
No.
they're a playoff team, and like their coach is going to get them there. He's going to
Yeah.
lead. He's going to speak forcefully. He's going to let his standards be known. We know what to expect from Mike Tomlin. Whereas with Shane, we don't always know what to expect or how he's going to go about creating that identity for his team. So I did like what he said, though, about culture. I'm on Shane's side about this. He's like, culture is about winning. And
It,
yeah, you got to freaking win. Like we talk
yeah.
about culture all day. And I know I just spent 20 minutes with you talking about it. Now I'm like going back on some of this stuff.
No, but it covers up a lot. That's for sure.
Exactly. If you win, it matters. And I thought what Ballard said was interesting too, Jim. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this because we've talked about this, and you were here covering the team as well. When he said culture isn't just having good guys, I thought that was awesome. I was like, yeah, like because I mean, yeah, you can have like good men, whoop de doo, and they're just good men who lose. He's like, we got to win. We got to figure out how to
Yeah.
get over that hump to maybe change our quote unquote culture.
When I think the biggest thing I underestimated when they added Philip Rivers, because I watched Philip Rivers play with the Chargers the year before, 2019, and I was like, he's cooked. Like, this is the end. This is a bad decision. And clearly I was wrong on the NFL side of it because he showed after about 4 or 5 games that he was not cooked. He was quite good. But the thing that I learned about Philip Rivers that he brought to the Colts that I think was more important than anything was he wanted to rip your fucking throat out. Like
Yeah.
that's like he all that's in practice. The coolest story I got to do when I was covering Philip Rivers was I got to call Eric Weddle, who is one of the best safeties of his generation.
Hmm.
And he was saying during practices against the Chargers were wars, like wars between Antonio Gates, LaDainian Tomlinson, Philip Rivers, Eric Weddle, Sean Merriman. Like, I mean, it was just all pros stacked, and they were going at each other at practice, trying to beat each other, talking as much shit as possible. You know, Rivers talks crap like crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and he does. And Weddle said he used to give it back too. But like,
Hmm.
that was the environment that Philip Rivers created. That is what he brought to Indianapolis. They don't. Again, I'm not at practice every day. I'm not to say they don't have a guy like that, but that's what Chris Ballard's talking about. When he injects a guy like
Yeah.
Philip Rivers into the culture, that's what he brings. He brings this. He wants to freaking kill you at practice,
Hmm.
and he wants to kill you at games too. And he has fun while doing it, but that's
Hmm.
what he wants to do. And so, I think that's what he's talking about. Is you want to win? Obviously, that brings the culture, but you got to bring in guys that want it that badly, and you got to bring them in from the outside sometimes because complacency will set in if you don't do it.
Exactly. And I do think that, and kind of wrapping up here, one of the things I want to hit before we get out of here is when I asked why can't this team get over the hump, and he mentioned that's another thing that they have to figure out, and maybe that is
Yeah,
talent, maybe that is want to, maybe that is competitive spirit, but like why do you all falter in so many big games? And Mo Alley Cox laid it out pretty quickly, and he was saying he has to weigh his offseason decisions. He mentioned winning as his biggest reason, for weighing where he wants to go. He was asked point blank about that, took a long pause, and was like winning. Because he said, here, he's like, we won here, but he said these last few years, the Vegas game a few years ago, obviously we know about Jacksonville. Then you fast forward 2023, they lose against Houston. Okay, get that. That's fine. This year, Denver and the Giants game, it's like, how could you let this happen when that's on the line, and why can't we get over the top? And Ballard was saying again that is one of his biggest indictments was I got to figure out why my team wilts under pressure, why they can never be like the bully in those situations, why we're always kind of getting beat up on. And so again, he owned a lot of things. I also asked him. It probably wasn't a very fair question, but I was just curious when I was talking to him about being brought back and what can you say to the fans, and Kevin Bowen asked him that same thing as well, and others in roundabout ways. What can you say to the fans about what we should expect from you? Should we believe you? We've heard it all before.
yeah.
And he was saying, I got to earn your trust back. I got to earn these things. And that earn word kind of clicked into my head. And I just asked him, do you think you've earned another opportunity, or was it given to you? And he's like, James, loaded question. I was like, yeah, I know it's loaded, but I'm like, look, I don't know. I don't know if Chris Ballard could honestly sit there this past week or yesterday and say, I earned the right to get another shot at this. I don't know if he can say that. Like
I don't
that's
think he
that's a
could. He
yeah.
tried to answer it.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do. I think that he was given another opportunity for reasons that I will not know until I talk to Jim Irsay. He was given that opportunity to do that, and obviously there's a lot to get into place. I know again we'll get into defensive coordinator stuff probably the next week. We'll for that for next
Yep.
week. Who's interviewing, different options, things like that. But it starts with personnel. Got to get a new defensive coordinator. Got to get some new players in here. Obviously, even though you're picking 14th, you got to pick a guy who can hopefully help you win right away. All of those things matter when it comes to kind of altering or changing this franchise because I mean, what we're seeing, man, like my memory of the Colts growing up in the Chicago area, growing up in Romeoville, Illinois,
Yeah.
was them winning every freaking year and then
12,
breaking
12
my
games.
heart as the
Yep.
young James Bears fan in the Super Bowl because they won and they had Peyton Manning and they had a squad and they had guys everywhere that were playmakers. Whereas now, covering this team, being in the city, it's almost like the fan base has become apathetic towards whatever anybody says because it's like, yeah, well, remember that guy Andrew Luck? He walked away. Yep, we've been, stinking it up since. Like that's what people feel in this city, and it takes a lot, I think, Jim, to change that.
It's going to take a lot. And it sounds like Chris Ballard at least wants to try to change his approach. I'm not sure he's the right guy to do it. I'm not. I do think you did a great job of laying out why Jim Irsay gave him one more shot.
Yeah, there's not
And
great options.
no, in the story that you wrote, I think it was following the end of the
The
season.
announcement,
You kind
yeah.
of you laid out why this is probably the most sensible path, even if it is not. It doesn't
Earned.
feel the best. Like has he? It can be true that it makes sense to keep Chris Ballard and he hasn't earned it. Both things can
There
make
you
sense.
go.
I know
That's a
that's
good way to
hard
put it.
to fathom, but it can make sense. So
Yeah.
I think this is a make or break season for him. It's a make or break season for Anthony Richardson, obviously, as you pointed out, and Shane Slagan too is just along for the ride on that one because again, you can his track record through 2 seasons is fine, 17-17, I believe.
Yep.
So. But there's no way if Ballard is gone and Richardson's gone, if Slaken's staying, that would be my guess. So it's a huge year for the Colts in terms of I actually think there are true stakes. I think we've talked about every offseason. Like, if they're not good, I don't think they fire Ballard. They probably, they bring back Richardson. Like, I think this is it. I really do. I think this is the offseason where, ahead of the season, I should say, where I think major changes have to take place. They have to be aggressive. I just looked it up because I was interested. When they traded for DeForest Buckner, it was the number 13 overall pick. Colts have the number 14 overall pick. I wouldn't be surprised. He started talking about that trade right around the Super Bowl right after the Super Bowl, I should say. I have no idea who it would be for. I couldn't even tell you a position. I do think Chris Ballard meant what he said in terms about trying to be more aggressive and do something different. So I think anything's in play, which could be a fun offseason, honestly.
Yeah, it'll be busy, obviously, for us, and we'll keep it locked at the Athletic. Obviously, some things will slow down when it comes to media availabilities and things like that. But obviously, I will keep you all posted on what's next. Expect for next week for us to hit on some of the free agency stuff, defensive coordinator, things like that. So we'll check back in soon. But as always, thanks for listening. Have a great weekend as well. Enjoy the playoff football. I sure will, and we'll talk to you next time.